Look at a modern electric vehicle. It glides silently down paved roads, a symbol of clean engineering and a post-carbon future. But the battery keeping that car moving begins its life in a vastly different landscape, scraped from the red dirt of a rugged, unpaved terrain thousands of miles away. Every year, assembly lines across the globe churn out millions of these vehicles. The demand for the rechargeable batteries inside them and the metals required to build them is climbing at an aggressive rate. This map highlights a staggering geographical bottleneck. Roughly 70% of the world's cobalt, the critical silver-gray metal that prevents these high-capacity batteries from catching fire, is located right here, inside the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This is a nation the size of Western Europe, draped across the heart of Africa. It is threaded by the continent's second-largest river and blanketed by the world's second-largest rainforest. By any standard of measurement, the Congo possesses enormous natural advantages. It holds vast reserves of fresh water, immense tracts of timber, and highly arable land. On paper, it has the inventory of a deeply prosperous state. Yet nearly 3/4 of its population lives on less than $2.15 a day. The ground holds the most valuable metal of the Green Age, but the people living on top of it rank among the poorest on Earth. Owning a resource is entirely separate from extracting its wealth. To understand how a nation can sit on a geological lottery ticket and remain severely impoverished, we have to follow the cobalt itself. For decades, the Katanga region in the southeast has been carved open by large-scale industrial pits. Hundreds of millions of years ago, shifting crust laid down some of the densest concentrations of copper and cobalt on the planet. Today, that geology creates a highly uneven geopolitical dynamic. The Congo controls the bulk of the global supply, while a single dominant buyer, China's rechargeable battery industry, accounts for roughly 60% of the world's demand. When bargaining strength is that skewed, the wealth rarely stays at the point of origin. We need to track the metal from the ground, across the global supply chain, to locate exactly where the financial value slips away. This creates an invisible economic map. It is a system where a country's raw dirt enriches multiple foreign economies, leaving its own citizens out of the equation. The first leak happens directly in the dirt. Alongside the massive foreign-run operations, there are at least 67 informal, hand-dug artisanal sites across the southeast. An estimated 250,000 people work these sites with simple shovels and sacks. That workforce includes roughly 40,000 children, some crawling into unsupported tunnels to haul out the exact material that powers a $30,000 car. For this physical labor, it might earn $2 a day, but even that meager amount rarely stays whole. Up to half of a worker's revenue is routinely seized by site-controlling cooperatives, which are frequently run by local politicians. Beyond the pit gates, the region bleeds out an estimated $40 million in mining revenue every single month. Smuggling, undervaluation, and quiet corruption siphon the money off before it ever hits a public ledger. Before the metal even leaves the province, the wealth it generates is actively blocked from reaching the people physically pulling it from the earth. Look at this scale to see what happens to the broader national economy. When a country pours all its energy into one massive export like mineral wealth, its currency values often shift, causing domestic industries like farming and manufacturing to wither and break under the pressure. Economists call this Dutch disease, but the rot goes deeper than currency. When a government can fund itself simply by selling what comes out of the ground, it stops relying on its citizens for tax revenue. Consequently, it stops building schools to strengthen its national institutions or answer to the public. This architecture of extraction has deep historical momentum. From rubber and ivory to uranium and now cobalt, infrastructure was intentionally designed by colonial powers to move resources directly from the pit to the border. The roads rarely connect domestic communities. That asymmetrical bargaining continues today at the national level. In one infamous arrangement, the Congolese state miner handed a consortium of Chinese companies copper and cobalt deposits valued at roughly $90 billion in exchange for infrastructure. The compensation flowing back into the country fell drastically short of that figure, while the foreign partners retained a 68% stake. The resource curse isn't a geological inevitability. It is a systemic weakening of national power that turns state wealth into a prize, easily captured by outside interests at the border. Once the metal crosses that border, it hits the global shipping lanes. But the Congo does not export a finished, battery-ready product. It ships out a crude, half-finished paste called cobalt hydroxide. It is the economic equivalent of exporting cheap flour instead of selling the valuable baked bread. Global battery metal demand exploded 26-fold over 20 years, with 82% of that growth in China. Watch the value spike at the refining stage, where mud becomes high-purity sulfate. Chinese facilities control 70% of this process. This is the quiet machinery of the entire paradox. The country that owns the complex refinement step captures the vast majority of the final profit. The nation holding the original dirt is left with the smallest slice of the final price. But that geographical pattern is starting to face severe friction. The Congo is no longer playing the passive role it once did. In 2018, the national government declared cobalt a strategic mineral. Overnight, they tripled the export tax, explicitly asserting that the metal belongs to the state, and they intend to charge a premium for it. Local governors have intervened, seizing outbound trucks to force foreign operators back to the negotiating table. The state has even moved to control global supply directly, deliberately pausing exports to manipulate and push up market prices. The ultimate target of these disruptions is leverage. By squeezing the raw supply, the Congo is demanding that modern, highly profitable industrial refining facilities be constructed directly on its own soil. They are proving geopolitical destiny is flexible. Enduring poverty was never written into the rock. It was written into the contracts, and those contracts can be torn up and renegotiated. Norway extracted oil and built immense national wealth. Botswana mined diamonds and built schools. The difference between prosperity and struggle rarely comes down to geology. It is entirely dependent on who controls the subsequent steps in the supply chain. The next time you slide a smartphone into your pocket, consider the long, invisible road inside it. That device relies on a metal pulled from a hand-dug pit, shipped across oceans as a crude paste, and refined in factories thousands of miles from its origin. The defining economic battle of the green energy age is happening right now in African dirt. The metal of the future is Congolese. The real test is whether the nation can command enough power to ensure the wealth it generates stays exactly where it belongs.